Hello, this is the presentation for the intro QRM. We are group for Youngseok-woo, Chang-pyo-hong, Chong-yeon Lee, and Isak Chong. So we were assigned to make interest rate predictions, and the interest rate influences the economic growth by changing the aggregate demand. So it also helps to predict monetary policies of the government from the central bank that take control of the inflation and national economy. Inflationary predictions can also contribute for the government debt management and consumer behaviors, and also be useful for currency exchange rate prediction, and also help the government to make policies for the inflation control. So we found that the interest rate prediction is very important for now, and also for future. In, and its importance is getting grower since lots of global economy and markets are closely intertwined with each other, and especially even we are South Koreans, we have to also focus on major global markets like in the United States, and we believe that is the reason why South Korea and United States were the two major countries that we were assigned to make interest rate predictions for this week's for this lecture's presentation. So the analysis on interest rate will be done by using the AI methods. We thought the interest rate data of United States and South Korea could be found from the websites like FRAD and KYSIS that shows the lots of data related of interest rates of both nations. And we believe the national GDP was the primary source that could be used to analyze the interest rate and make for predictions and prospects. And for the analysis, since the inflation rate is highly connected with the GDP deflator in making calculations, we thought GDP would be the major data for finding out the interest rate of United States and South Korea. So this is an example of how we try to exploit our data. So this is the reference series GDP normalized for the United States. It shows how it goes up and down for since 1950s to 2020s from now, and also nowadays. So by using these kind of data, we will try to find out the prospects and analyze and make an analysis of the interest rate using the AI tools. So these are the key variables that are important for interest rate predictions. There are 6 of them, and the first one is about the monetary aggregates. These are the components of monetary base that can be an example like narrow money and broad money. The second is the inflation indicators, like the consumer price indices like CPI and producer price indices of PPI. And as I have mentioned previously, GDP and GDP deflators like GDP and GNI by economic activities are the major sources that we can use as a data for calculating and making analysis for interest rate, since they are highly connected with inflation rate, and also that leads to the change of interest rate as well. Next, the exchange rates, like the foreign exchange rate, like the national foreign currency level is also an important way of method to find out how the global interest rate is going changing now, and how it will try to, in what way it'll go, in what directions it will go and change like from now. So we believe that exchange rates could be useful ways to find out the interest rate. And the sentiment indices are the economic sentiment index. And lastly, the balance of payments that include international current account, official reserve assets could be also other useful tools to find out key variables to try to predict and analyze the importance and find out how important it is to make the interest rate predictions. So the detailed analysis will be discussed by our next speaker. So thank you for listening.
Okay, so now let me begin with the methodology for the machine learning and deep learning analysis. And these are some of the potential machine learning and deep learning technologies that we could implement on predicting the future interest rates. And of those, we decided to go with these highlighted for methods. And to begin with, random forest regressor, this is the most generic type of machine learning model that you can find. And then the LSTM model, which is the most generic type of deep learning model that you can find. And then there's the ARIMA model, which is good with time series analysis, and then XGBoost, which is also good with time series analysis, and it also handles missing data as well. And we do have some gaps to fill in our data, so I thought this was a good idea. And then here are the variables that we used. Interest rate, which was captured by the Fed fund rate, then CPI, core CPI, GDP, yield curve, which is US Treasury 10 years minus 2 years, and then trade balance, which is captured by balance in current account, and then government debt, household debt, housing price, stock market, which is captured by NASDAQ, and then M2 money supply, and then unemployment. So these variables were gathered in quarterly percent change terms, and then we did the normalization and differencing to get rid of the seasonality. And the reason why we need to do this is because if you don't do the normalization and differencing, there's a very high correlation between pro-cyclical variables, like as you can see in this heat map here, and this really ruins the correlative analysis. The next step was to do gather the variables for the Korean analysis, and then we gathered also the same interest rate, CPI, GDP, trade balance, government debt, household debt, housing price, stock market, money supply, unemployment. And then what's interesting here is the US Korean won interest rate, which we thought was also an important variable, and then the US interest rate, which is also another important variable. And the difference is that we went to COSIS to find the data, but unlike Fred, the span of the data was only from like 2006 or 2001 or something like that. So instead of gathering quarterly data, we gathered monthly data, and thankfully most of the data were in monthly terms, but some of them, such as like GDP, were in quarterly terms. So we had to interpolate using the mean to fill in the gap. With all these data, we worked on Google Colab. So first of all, we have all our data on the CSV files. We imported that into Google Drives and then onto Google Colab. And then we did the trimming because all the data have different starting dates. So we trimmed that to 1980 for the US interest rates and 2006 for Korean interest rates. And then we combined that into one data frame. And then first of all, we did a simple correlation analysis, as you can see here. And you can see that none of these variables really have a high correlation with US interest rates, which is this row here. Maybe CPI, GDP, and unemployment have some correlation, but it's still 0.2, 0.27. So it's really hard to predict with this number of coefficients. So this really shows that we need some sort of complicated and sophisticated machine learning, deep learning technology to properly predict the interest rate. Then we first did the normalization and differencing, and then we did the test train split. This is the standard procedure. Test size 0.2, random state 42. And then we first trained the random forest model. This is the model functionality measured in mean squared errors. And then we use that to do a feature importance analysis, which you can see here. And then this one is represented as a graph. I'll not discuss this in detail. This isn't my part. And then we moved on to the LSTM model. We did the same thing. test train split and then build the LSTM model. We used a ReLU activation function with 40 epochs with the batch number of 32, I believe, yes. And then that's the model error statistics. So we did a permutation feature importance analysis and a feature sensitivity analysis for LSTM. And then for ARIMA model, there is really no kind of feature importance analysis. So we kind of skipped that one. And then finally, there's the one for XGBoost as well. However, unfortunately, when we did the prediction of out sample data, it really didn't function. So we ran predictions with various models like this one or this one, and none of these really show meaningful predictions. Like this one is an ARIMA model analysis, but yes, it does kind of match the direction of the movement. There is a slight delay between the actual data and prediction, but even with this, like out sample forecasts, so this part is just like completely just flat for some reason, and we lacked the technological technological knowledge to solve this problem, and I guess this is left for future research. As you can see here, this one is also quite flat. And the same applies for Korean interest rate. We did a correlative analysis, and then XGBoost, random forest, and then same here. When we ran the prediction, it was just flat for some reason. I mean, it does predict that it's gonna increase in the future, but it's really worse than the simple regression analysis when it comes to the predictions, because this one shows the regression analysis prediction, and I mean, this one actually gives us some meaningful data. Now I will leave it on to the explanation of the results. Thank you.
So our group also conducted the random forest feature importance. And some of the most important features were from the random forest model were unemployment rate, US housing debt, GDP, US yield curve, and core CPI. And for the relationship with the core CPI, it certainly aligns with economic theory, as the Federal Reserve uses the federal funds rate as a primary tool to control inflation. When core inflation rises, the Fed often increases rates to curb inflationary pressures. This suggests that as core inflation rises, the Federal Reserve tends to increase interest rates to control inflation. And this reinforces some of the insights from the correlation analysis and further emphasizes their significance in monetary policy decisions. As is the case with GDP, when the economy grows, people and businesses need more money to conduct transactions, which increases the demand for money. With a stable money supply, this leads to higher interest rates. In addition, the relationship between housing debt and interest rate could imply that higher interest rates can increase household debt by making it harder for households to finance repayments. So we also did an LSTM analysis. So the random forest feature importance uses Gini importance to categorize the data into a ranking. And one of the downsides of random forest is that it has a tendency to prefer features with high cardinality. So a permutation feature importance test can eliminate some of these limitations of the random forest test. So the permutation feature importance provides contrasting results with the random forest findings. US government debt, CPI, and the stock market emerges as a key driver of the US interest rate. Sensitivity, on the other hand, is more in sync with the random forest test, as it reveals that the model predictions for US interest rate are sensitive to changes in US GDP, housing debt, and core CPI. Both the permutation feature importance test and the sensitivity test concluded that the US government debt were the most important factor in determining interest rates. So for the overall analysis, based on these tests that we conducted, we can draw some key conclusions. So core CPI was a primary factor in influencing US interest rates. And this makes sense because the Federal Reserve closely monitors inflation and adjusts interest rates accordingly to maintain price stability. So the Fed uses the federal funds rate as a primary tool to control inflation. When core inflation rises, the Fed often increases rates to curb inflationary pressures. The US core CPI emerges as the most influential factor across multiple analyses. So for example, the correlation analysis, it showed a moderately positive correlation with the federal funds rate. And for the random forest importance test, it ranked as one of the features which influenced the federal funds rate. As was the case with the LSTM model, it identified as a key driver and a sensitive feature. And another key feature is the US GDP. Economic growth is a crucial consideration for the Fed. Strong GDP growth might lead to inflation, potentially causing rate increases. So slow or negative growth could prompt interest rate cuts to stimulate the economy. So for the random forest feature importance test, the US GDP ranked as one of the top features which heavily influenced the federal funds rate. And the LSTM model also showed that it was the second most sensitive feature. And third and lastly, the US housing debt is another critical feature. Higher interest rates can increase household debt by making it harder for households to finance repayments. So for example, the random forest feature importance test, housing debt ranked as the second most critical feature. And for the LSTM model, it was identified as the third most sensitive feature.
In this part of the presentation, we'd like to explore the psychological factors that influence how we predict interest rates. Our main argument is that people's expectations about interest rate changes can impact markets, businesses, and consumers just as much as the actual policies themselves. Let's start with an example. Imagine the central bank signals that it might want to increase interest rates in the future. Businesses might delay or cancel their investments, and consumers could rush to make big purchases before borrowing becomes more expensive. This kind of forward guidance affects behavior even before any official policy changes occur. It ties into prospect theory, which argues that people weigh potential losses and gains based on their current situation, influencing their financial decisions based on perceived risks and benefits. Trust is another crucial element. Central banks need to maintain the confidence of financial markets, governments, and the public. When a central bank is seen as credible, it can guide expectations through clear communication, reducing the need for drastic policy interventions. However, if trust erodes due to mixed messages or unexpected decisions, it can significantly disrupt the markets. Behavioral finance theories show that markets often react more to how people feel and perceive things than to actual economic data. This highlights how factors like overconfidence and sticking to initial assumptions can impact market stability. This also applies to the financial sector. Investors closely monitor the language used by central bank leaders for clues about future policies. Even small changes in wording can cause big changes in the market, demonstrating how much psychology matters for financial stability. Herd behavior in behavior economics explains how market participants often move together based on shared beliefs or emotions, leading to exaggerated market movements in response to central bank communication. These psychological dynamics can also shape long-term economic expectations. If businesses and consumers believe a central bank isn't effectively managing inflation or is too slow to address economic issues, uncertainty increases. This can lead to less credit availability, fewer investments, and reduced consumer spending, creating a ripple effect throughout the economy. Theories like theory of planned behavior suggest that these perceptions and the resulting uncertainty can significantly alter economic behavior, leading to slower growth and prolonged periods of stagnation. Finally, interest rate policies also influence societal and cultural behaviors. Extended periods of low interest rates can create asset bubbles in housing and stock markets, encouraging speculative investments driven by the fear of missing out. Over time, this speculative behavior can build up systematic risks, potentially leading to financial instability or crises. Irrational exuberance theory captures how overly optimistic market sentiments can influence asset prices beyond their true values, setting the stage for future corrections and economic downturns. All in all, interest rate policies aren't just technical adjustments to the economy. They intersect with economics, politics, and psychology, shaping financial markets and society as a whole. Central banks play a key role in managing trust, expectations, and societal balance, with each policy, decisions, and its communication having wide-reaching effects. By incorporating economic psychological theories, we can better understand how cognitive biases, trusts, and behavior patterns influence the effectiveness and impact of monetary policy.